Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. Now, what I want to show you today is that civil rights are connected to civil rights. Civil rights are connected to civil rights. And when I say civil rights, I'm talking about the bag. You know, your young folks like to talk about getting the bag. And many of you, that's all you talk about is getting the bag. But the thing I want you to understand is if you don't have civil rights, you won't have civil rights. If you don't have civil rights, you won't have civil rights. In other words, if you don't have civil rights, you can't get to the bag. And I want to demonstrate that today with a little story, a little illustrative story that I think could help explain this better than just me talking. All right, so let's go to that little illustrative story, okay? So let's start out with something very simple. What was the purpose of the civil rights movement? And you see Dr. King there, and you see in the middle, access to capital. And then you see the bag, what all of us want. And let me say that that is a very legitimate goal to get the bag because African-American people, we make up about 10% of the population of this country, maybe 10, 11, 12%. But we only own about 4% of this nation's wealth. Even after 400 years of being in this country, and 250 years of chattel slavery. And then so we've been free for about 150 years, and we still own less than 5% of this nation's wealth. So we all should be interested in getting the bag. I ain't mad at nobody about trying to get the bag. But you got to understand this thing is about layers. The first layer was abolishing slavery. The second layer was about abolishing Jim Crow because both of those systems held us away from any access to wealth, any access to money. And without money, we can't do anything. Okay? Somebody said, nothing for nothing leaves nothing. It takes money to make money. Simple principles. So the abolishment of slavery, then the abolishment of Jim Crow, so that doors could be open for us to have access to capital. Now, let's see what exactly I'm talking about. And by the way, when you hear anyone talking about Dr. King, the thing that you should remember is when Dr. King gave that speech in Washington, the March on Washington, folks focus on him talking about how he wanted his 4 children to be judged by their character and not the color of their skin. But there was a very important part of that speech that people often miss. And it's where Dr. King said, we come to get our check cashed. In other words, he said, we're coming to get our bag. You owe us. The work we've done in this country, you owe us. He was there demanding reparations. Where white people try to make it all about color blindness, Dr. King was there for reparations. And he knew the road to reparations were civil rights. He knew that because he had to get those barriers removed. All right, now, let me illustrate that. So let me introduce you to Jamal. Jamal the businessman. And let me introduce you to Jack the racist banker. So Jamal the businessman, Jack the racist banker. Now, what does Jamal want? Jamal wants capital. Jamal wants capital. And Jamal is entitled to that capital. He's entitled as any other person is to that capital because he's a citizen of the United States of America. And that alone should entitle him, just like the Declaration of Independence says. The Declaration of Independence says that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed from their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So Jamal is just as entitled to civil rights as he is to civil rights. All right, now let's go back over. So the problem is Jamal is dealing with a racist banker and a racist banking system. So the bank has a policy, no colored people. Now, watch this. Banks have often exercised their racist policies pursuant to such things as redlining, where they would not loan money to buy a house or anything else to people who live within a certain red line community. They literally took red markers and marked off the black community, and they would not lend money to people who lived in that red lined area. So what did that do? That kept blacks from access to what? Yes, capital. Now, what did black people do in response? They started the civil rights movement and kicked those doors down. They kicked those doors down. Dr. King, Fannie Lou Hamer, Reverend Ralph Abernathy, Dr. King's right-hand man, a whole slew of other organizations, SNCC, CORE. Black folks were united and they fought against white supremacy that was trying to keep them from being able to get to the bag. But they fought and kicked that door down. And that's why I've been telling you, don't disrespect those people. Those people are the reason why you have access to the bag. Those people, we owe a debt of gratitude. So once those doors were kicked down, then the civil rights laws were put in place to keep the doors open, such as the Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, Fair Housing Act of 68, and such other federal statutes as 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. Those laws keep the doors open to the banks and venture capitalists and so on, so that you can get to the bag. Again, there's nothing whatsoever wrong with desiring the bag. We deserve the bag. We laid the foundation, the economic foundation to this country. So we deserve the bag. But we had to remove those hindrances. Are you with me? All right, let's go back. So you heard me talk about Section 1981. This is critical when it comes to the bag. It ensures that all individuals, regardless of race, have the right to make contracts, sue, be parties in court, give evidence, and enjoy the full benefit of all laws for security of persons and property. What does that mean? That is very important. It says that we, because of 42 U.S.C. Section 1981, because of the civil rights movement, we can enter contracts just like whites. And the first thing you should ask yourself is, really? We couldn't enter contracts? That's right. No white establishment, no bank or any other establishment were obligated under the law to contract with us. The only reason we can contract today with these establishments to gain access to capital is because of 42 USC Section 1981. That was originally the Civil Rights Act of 1866. So if we allow MAGA, Trump, the GOP, Project 2025 to roll back civil rights, then we won't have access to the capital we need to get the bag. All right? That's what I want you to see here. So, because of 42 USC Section 1981, Jack, the racist banker, has to do business with us. No matter what he personally thinks of us. We don't care about that. We just want a fair chance to capital so that we can build a bag, so that we can create the bag. In other words, so that we can build wealth. We don't care what Jack thinks about us personally. This movement was not about, the civil rights movement was not about being friends with Jack, living close to Jack, being in the classroom with Jack. No, this was about access to capital. And we know that Jack and his fellow white men controlled the capital. So we weren't trying to just nosy up cozy to Jack to feel good about ourselves because we're now a personal acquaintance of Jack. No, this was about getting access to the bag, to capital. All right? So regardless of what he feels about us, if he doesn't do business with us and we're qualified, our credit is good and so on, then we can sue Jack. We can take Jack to court and sue Jack under 42 USC Section 1981. And that will get Jack's attention. All right? Now, in steps MAGA. MAGA's intent is to get rid of these civil rights laws, Section 1981. But here's the weird thing. Because a lot of us have been told voting is not important, a lot of us haven't been voting. Consequently, MAGA is then able to repeal these laws. How? Well, just like now, they control Congress and they can just simply repeal laws. And because Trump is in the White House again, he can appoint even more right-wing judges. So that when you take Jack and his bank to court, you got a white right-wing judge listening to the case, and guess what's going to happen to your case? It's going to get dismissed and thrown out of court. And that judge was appointed by Trump, who is right-wing, who is anti-civil rights, and he's on that bench expressly to get rid of your civil rights case, to make sure that you don't have access to capital. Because remember, it's very simple. They see us as competition. They're trying to hold on to their wealth. And the basis of that wealth, where did they get it from? You and me and our ancestors. But they're trying to hold on. So Trump is in power right now to hold on to what they have. And that's what MAGA is trying to do. So don't think that by surrendering to MAGA or acquiescing to MAGA, that's going to help you get the bag. No. By not voting, you are allowing MAGA to re-up every time. They re-up every time. They put more anti-civil rights laws in place. They repeal more anti-civil rights laws. They put more right-wing judges on the bench. So don't you think for a moment that cozying up to MAGA is going to be good for blacks, because MAGA is committed to retaining and conserving power for white men. All right. But because many of us have been bamboozled into not voting, MAGA was able to get in. MAGA was able to weaken or even gut 42 U.S.C. Section 1981 and the other civil rights laws. And what happens? The door is closed once again. No access to the Capitol. Your chances now of getting the bag just reduced tenfold because you brought into the rhetoric of folks telling you that voting means nothing. Well, I'm trying to show you how wrong they are. Again, if you don't have civil rights, you will not have civil rights. No civil rights, no civil rights. All right? And not only now do you have no access to the Capitol, you no longer have access to the courts to sue racist Jack, because Section 1981 was the only way you would get into court and have a legitimate case if Jack refused to contract with you on the basis of your race. But you played the fool. You listen to these people who say voting is not important. Just vote the couch to get the Democrats' attention. This ain't about the Democrats. This is about preserving civil rights so that we can have civil rights. Are you with me? So you lost access to Capitol. You lost the ability, the legal ability to sue. They got rid of a whole bunch of the other civil rights laws. And now we're set back 75, 80 years. And that was because we didn't understand that this fight is in layers. We abolished slavery, we abolished Jim Crow, and then after doing that, the third layer was to get the bag. But by not voting, we've stepped back a step. We've removed one of the layers. I don't know any other way to make this any plainer than I'm making it. All right? So, no access to court. Where are we now with no access to court? Right back where we started. No colored people allowed. So once again, no civil rights, no civil rights, no bag. The end. That's the end of this simple, illustrative story. And what is the moral of this story? No civil rights, no civil rights. All you got to do is remember what the late Coretta Scott King said. She said, freedom is never really won. Each generation has to win it for their generation. So we can't lay back and do nothing and think these things are already won. We'll never lose these things. If you think that way, you're playing the fool. You're being bamboozled, to use an expression oftentimes connected with Malcolm X. All right? So just remember, no civil rights, no civil rights, no bag. If you can't get access because of the color of your skin, then you can't get the bag. So let's fight to preserve civil rights. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video.